Every apartment in this building has a twin. Mine has been empty for 6 years. The last tenant left everything behind. Her clothes, her coffee cup, even her toothbrush. Nobody ever came to collect it. Tonight, I found out why. I signed the lease without reading the fine print. Rent too low for a place this beautiful. High ceilings, hardwood floors, morning light that poured in like it was trying to apologize for something. My realtor called it a rare opportunity. She said it twice actually, like she was convincing herself as much as me. I should have asked why nobody had lived there in 6 years. I didn't. The landlord mentioned a neighbor across the hall on my first day. A quiet older woman, he said. Kept to herself. Wouldn't bother me. So the next morning, coffee in hand, I knocked on 4A to introduce myself. Except when I looked up from my phone, there was no door there. Just wall. Smooth, painted ordinary wall, like it had always been that way. I ran my hand across it. I could still feel the outline of a door frame underneath the paint. I asked the landlord about it later that day. He laughed it off, said I must have knocked on the wrong side of the hallway, that the numbers could be confusing in a building this old. But his eyes didn't laugh. They went somewhere else entirely, somewhere tired, somewhere that had answered this exact question before, many times, to many people who weren't me. There's no 4A, he said finally. Never has been. Then why, I wondered, did I still feel it watching me eat dinner that night? 3 days in, I found a note taped inside my kitchen cabinet, tucked behind the mugs like someone had hidden it in a hurry. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was mine. The same loop on my lowercase g. The same slant I'd had since high school. But I had never written it. I know I hadn't, because the paper was yellowed at the edges, brittle, years old. It said only 4 words. Don't look at midnight. I read it 7 times before I understood I was afraid. There's an antique mirror mounted in the hallway just outside my door. Gilded frame, tarnished with age, far too ornate for a building this plain. The landlord said it came with the apartment. It always does, he told me, and didn't explain further. And I didn't ask him to. I stood in front of it that first week and told myself it was just glass. Old, warped, imperfect glass. But my reflection moved half a second slower than I did, every single time, and I told myself that was just glass too. I started asking around the building. The man in 3B said he'd lived there 11 years and never once seen anyone come or go from the 4th floor besides me. The woman who ran the corner store said the building had a reputation. Nothing specific, just a feeling people got and never came back to test. And when I finally found the old tenant records in a box in the basement, every single name for apartment 4B, going back decades, was crossed out. Except mine. Mine was written in ink that hadn't dried yet. I told myself I wouldn't look. I really did believe that. Lying in bed with the note folded on my nightstand, the mirror waiting patiently in the hallway, like it had waited for every tenant before me. But curiosity doesn't ask permission, and fear has a strange gravity of its own. At 11:59, barefoot on the cold hardwood, I stood in front of the glass and watched the second hand crawl toward 12. At midnight, my reflection smiled. I hadn't moved my mouth at all. I know I hadn't, because I felt my own jaw locked tight with fear, felt my own breath catch and hold. But she smiled anyway, slow and wide, and entirely too pleased. like she'd been waiting years for someone to finally stand still long enough to see her properly. I didn't scream. I wish I had, honestly. Screaming would have felt like doing something. Instead, I just ran. Through my own front door. Down 4 flights of stairs I don't remember taking. Out into a street I told myself I recognized. My lungs burned. My bare feet slapped against pavement I hadn't stopped to notice was freezing cold. I only stopped running when I realized I had nowhere left to run to. The street outside wasn't the street I'd walked in on 3 weeks earlier. Same buildings, same lampposts, same cracked pavement, but no people, no cars, no wind even. Though I could see trash bags rustling on the curb like something was breathing behind them. I turned in a slow circle, and the street turned patiently with me, waiting to see what I'd do next. I turned around to go back the way I'd come, already planning to call someone. Anyone. Once I got inside, the door to the building was open, and through it, in the warm lamplight of my own living room, I could see someone sitting calmly on my couch, legs crossed, waiting. It took me a full 3 seconds to understand I was looking at myself. I found the real landlord in the lobby a moment later, like he'd been waiting there the entire time, unsurprised by any of it. "You're not the first," he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. "You won't be the last either. The building just needs someone in 4B. It's always needed someone. I just show them the apartment. What happens after that was never up to me." He told me 4A was never a separate apartment at all. It never had 4 walls of its own, never had a lease, never existed on paper. It was a mirror of 4B, a space built to hold whatever came before the current tenant, folded neatly out of sight until it was needed again. And every tenant of 4B, he said, eventually becomes what's waiting inside it. That's not a curse. That's just how the building was built. Every tenant before me left a note taped somewhere in that kitchen. I know because I found them all. Eventually, dozens of them, hidden in cabinets and behind loose floorboards, each one written in the same handwriting, but signed with a different name, and yet somehow, impossibly, still mine. I wasn't reading warnings left by strangers who came before me. I was reading my own memory, written down and left behind over and over by every version of myself the mirror had ever kept. I understood finally, standing there surrounded by decades of my own handwriting. The mirror was never showing me a reflection. It was showing me what was left of everyone who had come before, every face it had worn, every name it had borrowed, layered one on top of the other like sediment. And it was hungry, patiently, endlessly hungry, for just one more. But I was wrong about one thing, and it was the only thing that mattered. I was never the tenant. I was never the one who signed the lease, or carried the boxes, or asked the landlord about the door that wasn't there. I was the thing that had been waiting in 4A the entire time. Mara was only ever the last mask I wore, the way I did every 20 or 30 years, whenever the old one finally wore thin and needed replacing, exactly like all the others before her. Somewhere across the city, right now, a young woman is signing a lease. The rent is too low for a place this beautiful, and her realtor is calling it a rare opportunity, and she is smiling, thinking she's the lucky one. Apartment 4B is empty again. It won't be for long. It never is.